desiring something or wanting something, it has to be something that hasn't been fulfilled yet. So you're reaching for something that is new. And we want to say in a way that you can really hear it, that it's a steady attention to something that causes it to come and then keeps it coming. So there are only two reasons that something would come and then go. Either it came and you were satisfied, and so you were focused upon other things and took your attention from it, or you were focusing in opposition of it. And usually that's what happens with people, is that they think that the subject of money or the subject of prosperity is just one subject, when really it is two. Every subject is two subjects. It's like a stick that you pick up, and on one end of it is wanted, and on the other end of it is the absence of wanted. So sometimes people think that they're focused upon what they want, when actually they are focused upon its absence, or they're worried about its absence. And so they're creating a momentum of resistance that makes it hard to come, and it makes it hard to stay after it has come. So it's a really important distinction, and the only way you can know for sure which end of the stick you're focused upon is by the way you feel. And it is also worth saying that once you have identified that you're on the end of the stick that you want because it feels good, and you're able to maintain it without so much split energy, then you accomplish momentum. And once the momentum is strong enough, now you've got a really influential point of attraction going, where it just has to come to you. For it to be otherwise would be completely illogical. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Sometimes people will say, well, there are lots of examples. A mother will say to her child, "Don't you know I love you?" And in that moment, there's no love. In that moment, there is maybe a desire for love, but there's no love right there. There's the other end of the stick going on. And so the child is confused, hearing the word love, but it's not being backed up with any emotion. And so they learn a word or a concept with a vibration that doesn't match it. And most people have learned the concept of money or prosperity from a vibration that doesn't match it. Because most people, when they talk about money, are coming at it from a shortage consciousness, wanting to overcome something. Well, you can't overcome what you're wanting to overcome. You're just adding momentum to it, and its influence is overcoming you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So do you want to ask something more specific now that we have a basis here?
So it does happen that my experience sounds just exactly like what you're talking about, that I wanted it, and it came in abundance, and then I became worried that it wouldn't be there, and therefore it went away.
Yeah. It seems pretty logical now, doesn't it?
It totally now. Totally. So how to swing that back the other way?
It naturally swings back, because when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. And so it really is a matter of knowing where you want your focus to be, and then knowing what it feels like when your focus is really there in a solid way. So it is as simple as talking more about what you do want and less about what you don't want, and not panicking when you feel worry, but feeling knowledgeable. In other words, oh, this emotion means I'm doing that thing I do, where I'm actually confused about which end of the stick I'm focusing upon. Jerry used to talk about, he was a really good mentor to a lot of people, and a sort of financial guidance counselor to people. Esther still gets letters from people that knew Jerry when they were teenagers, who are now really thriving from the principles that he helped them to understand so many years ago. And he used to tell the story of how sometimes people who were in a situation where they had had some prosperity, and so they had a home, maybe two, and some cars and a boat, and he went down the list of things, and he described how he would see them. First the boat would go, and then the cable television, and then the things that were less necessary, and then this car. And it bothered him that they almost all seemed like they had to lose all of it before they started bouncing back. And he asked us, it was really a big question that he came to us with right from the beginning. Why is that? Why does it all seem like it has to go before the bounce back takes place? And we explained, because of the dread of more going, from the feeling of guardedness the first thing going made them know it could happen, and then they stood in guardedness about the rest. And guardedness is that attention to what is not wanted. And so there are a lot of things that you could do to try to make it swing back, but we don't recommend any of them, because we know that your natural life causes you to naturally desire, and that when you've experienced contrast, that the desire is born right out of it, and that your vortex has more prosperity now than it ever has. I'm going to tell you another story, because this is the basis of what we're going to say to you next, and then we're going to give you everything we've got on this, which isn't much and doesn't need to be, because it's simple. A man was talking to us one day in his 60s. He had just lost everything, and he was worried, to say the least. Pressed is a better description, and finding a hard time imagining getting it back, because in his description to us, he had spent his whole lifetime getting there, and now it didn't feel to him like he could just start over again. And we said to him, but you're not understanding what your true power is, what your true leverage is, or what your true assets are. You're not understanding that with everything that you lived and everything that you asked for, that you've got a vibrational currency going on, and that this big contrast where you've lost it all has caused a big bounce of desire that is active and vibrationally wanting to influence you back into its fold. It's not about starting over, because you're not starting over vibrationally. And since vibration is the name of this game always, and since the vibration now is bigger and more robust, and you've got more non-physical energy in on it than you ever have before, your probability of financial success is greater now than it has ever been. But you've got to stop looking at where you are, which brings us to the most important part of this conversation that we're having all day here today, that we haven't said yet that we really want to say. And that is, you know what messes up what you call your future manifestations and what we call your current vibration and readiness to perform for you? You're focusing upon what you think is. Your attention to what is, as it consumes you and influences your vibration to be about what is, prevents you from allowing what really is to come out of the vortex and into your bank. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
And it's because you're all mixed up on what's real. You think that reality is this furthest most manifestation, and we say that's old news. That's like gum that the flavor's all been chewed out of. That's not where you want to put your attention. That just doesn't matter. What is doesn't matter. But what's bounced out of what is, now this matters. This is where it all is. This is where the energy that creates worlds is focused. This is where your inner being is focused. This is where all the cooperative components have already been gathered. You just have to figure out how to be one of those cooperative components, which means you got to figure out how to stop worrying, which means you've got to stop letting what you think really is be less important to you by putting your attention somewhere else. So when we say, not a good idea to think about that, you say, okay, I won't think about that thing that I'm thinking about. I'm not going to think about that thing that I'm thinking about anymore, because thinking about it isn't good, and I'm not going to think about it, but I'm thinking about it, because you're thinking about that thing that you don't want to think about. So you got to think about something else. And often when you pick up the stick and you want to think about this end, you're thinking about that end, then you need to pick up a different stick, because that stick already has enough influence going on that it's more difficult for you to find your alignment. Now, when you hear this, it's going to make all the difference in the world for you, all of you. Any of you have anything that you want, just stay with us for a little bit, because this is how it is. You've put it all in your vortex through all of these step one moments that you've had. And Source has gathered it all up, and it's gestating, and it's ready in varying degrees to flow into your experience in ways that you can feel it, and ways that you can know it, and then ways that you can sniff it out, and then in ways that you can see it. These are thoughts turning to things, and they are in various stages of that becoming. So when you get it, that these things are becoming, that they are turning to things, and you choose a subject that you are not resistant about, then these steps that we've been talking about start making sense to you, because you did all these step ones, and so you've got all of this stuff brewing and ready for you. You don't have to focus on the precision or the specifics of these things in order to allow them to come about. You just can't focus in opposition. You could have 10 things that matter to you. 9 of them could be going terribly, and 1 of them could be going right. And if you would focus mostly upon that one that's going right, you would hold yourself in vibrational alignment with your vortex, and the other 9 would start performing well for you, because you've taken your attention away from the opposite end of the stick. Does that make sense to you? So that's where meditation really comes in, because you've already asked and it's already been given. And if you can quiet your mind, then your vibration rises, and then you receive the good ideas and off you go. So it's about not trying so hard. It's about not trying to make it happen. It's about accepting that it is happening, and you just have to allow yourself to allow yourself to allow yourself to allow yourself. You have to get ready to be ready to be ready to be ready to be ready. It doesn't all have to happen this red hot minute any more than the corn needs to become another stalk of corn and an ear of corn right now. It's a process, and it's becoming, and you understand it, and you're good with that. And meanwhile, you're keeping yourself happy by focusing upon anything and everything that makes you feel pretty good. And if you can't find anything that feels good, sleep a lot. If you can't find anything that feels good, then do anything you can that distracts you from it. We know there are things that feel better than others. Imagine the cork bobbing on the surface of the water. That's in the vortex. That's pure positive energy. Now, you can hold it under the water artificially, unnaturally. That's what negative emotion is. But when you let go, it's going to bob back up. And so when you said, how do you get it flipped the other way? It is flipping. It wants to flip. Your inner being is influencing it to flip. It's already flipped. It's already flipped. The energy's already flipped. It's already flipped. It's already performing for you. So we're going to speak this in negative terms, but sometimes it's easier to hear it. If you stop doing that thing you do that isn't letting it happen, it'll happen. And how do you know when you're doing that thing that doesn't let it happen? You're worried in your gizzard. Helpful?
Yes, definitely.
Something more?
I don't think so. But I want to say I knew that you would pick me. I know things in my life. I knew you would pick me, and I knew I would be here.
So this is a good thing to milk, to focus on. So you know how you knew that, and then it happened. There's a whole lot of abundance that we are knowing that is happening too. So this is what we meant earlier. When you notice the correlation between how something felt and what manifests, then you know that all things are that way. All things are that way. So how do you think you knew that? Esther didn't send you a note.
Somebody somewhere did.
You didn't get to pay extra. So how did you know?
Something told me.
We demand to know.
Something. The universe told me.
So you think that your vortex has knowledge about things that you have not yet seen. And you apparently have the ability to hear some of it. It's just a matter of more readiness to hear more of it. But on those subjects that you're stubborn, leave them alone. Don't try to hear on the subjects that you're stubborn on. Why? Because you'll convince yourself you're not good at hearing. And you are good at hearing. You're just better at some things than others because of the momentum that you've got going on. So listen for the things you can hear and revel in it every time. And acknowledge, oh, I see how that happened. Ah, that's information I needed, and there it was at the perfect time. There it was. It's happening all around you until you convince yourself that you can be or do or have anything, because you can.